Christmas, poker people. You know, I really do love this time of year. It's the weather, it's the time off from work, it's all the memories from growing up as a kid with my brother, with my parents doing the whole Christmas thing, decorating the tree, going to Christmas tree lane. It's the music and it's the awesome food as well, you know. I always put on like 10, maybe 8 to 10 pounds during the Christmas time every single year because of all the get-togethers, the friends, the family, the super rich food that always gets served, you know. And of course, the beer and the wine, can't go without that. And dessert, don't forget the dessert too. You know, I love it so much. I love Christmas, so I want to say to everybody, Merry Christmas out there. And being the end of the year as well, it really is a great opportunity to reflect on the past 366 days. Yes, maybe you forgot. Leap year, baby, 366. So what a year 2016 was for me, and I hope it was a great year for all of you as well. So I know that in last week's episode, number 111, I said this episode would be about post-flop blind defense for MED number 4. But then I realized, you know, hey, it's Christmas coming up, so I want to do something a little different for today's show in commemoration of Christmas and for the entire past year that we've all gone through. And this podcast, the Smart Poker Study podcast, it's growing, and I constantly get new listeners contacting me via Twitter, email, and within the Facebook group, and they're telling me that they've just discovered the show. So I thought to myself, hey, I want to spend today's episode talking about what I feel are the 10 most powerful episodes of 2016. And of course, a lot of these episodes have not been heard by new listeners. And maybe those of you who have been around for a long time, a lot of episodes come out in a year. It's possible that you missed a few, you know? But these episodes, they got a ton of downloads. They were on very important topics, and they elicited a ton of feedback from listeners as well. And not only those things, you know, but I'm constantly referring back to these episodes within the podcast or in response to listener questions. You know, somebody sends me a question. I say, hey, go back and listen to episode 12. I talk about that here. So you can listen here and go download all 10 episodes in iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play, or, you know, you can even listen to them in YouTube. Or you can hit the show notes for links to each episode. The show notes page for today is www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod112. And in those show notes, I'll have all 10 episodes listed there with a little bit of, you know, with a little intro on each. And there will be a link to the show notes page for each episode, as well as a direct download link to just listen to it right in the browser right there. Okay, let's jingle those bells.
And now for our feature presentation.
Alrighty, here we go, counting down from episode number 10, which is still very powerful, down to episode number 1, the most powerful.
Number 10.
Number 10 was episode 43, which was an interview with Alex Assassinato Fitzgerald. So, episode number 43, it was my first interview with the legendary Assassinato himself. Alex, he's an incredible player and a great coach as well. You know, I've been following his stuff for a long time by listening to the 1 Outer podcast, subscribing to his PokerHeadRush.com newsletter, and purchasing webinars from him, you know. Many of my improvements in MTTs, they've come directly from paying attention and learning and listening to Alex, of course, you know. And the reason this podcast was so powerful was because of Alex's discussion on having a professional poker player's mindset and how anyone can develop it, even the hobbyist, even just the weekend warrior, they can develop that professional poker player's mindset. And Alex has tons of experience taking beginning MTT students and taking them up through the levels to become professionals themselves. Not only that, but he also turns like hobbyists into very profitable players. And he discusses all of that a little bit in this episode. He also addresses an MTT leak that one of our listeners had, and he gave solid advice on how to fix it. And I really don't do many interviews in this podcast, as you know, but if you're going to check out one of the interviews, this is the one, episode 43. Okay, so that was number 10 on the list. Let's go on to the next.
Number 9.
Number 9 on the 10 most powerful episodes of the year is episode number 5. It's all about warm-ups and cooldowns for A-game greatness. So this episode, it sounds a bit boring, you know, warming up and cooling down. What's so big about that? But it is a topic that most players simply ignore. But it can help you make some great strides in your game. Within the episode, number Number 5, I discuss why we all need to implement, nay, why it is integral to include warm-ups and cooldowns as part of your pre- and post-session rituals. I gave you, within the episode, I gave you a very simple, quick, and effective way to do both the warm-ups and the cooldowns. The biggest reason to do the warm-up is to get into your A-game mindset, and the reason for incorporating a cooldown is to help you reflect on the lessons learned and the play of the session. I won't go into greater detail than that right now, but suffice it to say, if you don't do both of these yet, you've got to listen to episode number 5 to learn more about the benefits of them. Alrighty, on to the next in the countdown.
Number 8.
Number 8 is episode number 22, which was the course Skill 1 about playing a simple and effective pre-flop game. So this episode is actually powerful for a couple of reasons. First, this was the first episode in a series of podcasts that I dedicated to the incredible book by Ed Miller called The Course. This book is geared towards live cash game players, but all 10 of the skills within the book, they can all be applied to every form of poker. And it is by far the best poker strategy book I've ever read. And secondly, this is the episode where I introduced my 7 steps to poker book learning. I even made a PDF of the 7 steps, and I made it available through that episode's show notes at www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod22, or if you're on the show notes for this episode, just click through the link there, We all read poker books, but I think most of us don't get enough out of them. We'll pop them open, start reading, or read from start to finish without really putting things into action, without taking good notes. When you do that kind of thing, a lot of the info within the book just goes in one ear or in one brain and out the other brain. You just lose most of it. Like 80% of it is gone within a week. But these 7 steps in the poker book learning PDF, they will help you to get the most out of every chapter you read. So please listen to the episode and get that PDF for yourself and use it when you purchase that book, The Course. Oh, and if you do want to purchase it, go through my my Amazon affiliate link right there in today's show notes right there. And it gives me a little kickback, Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And so on to the next in the countdown.
Number 7.
Number 7 on the top 10 most powerful episodes of 2016 is episode number 2, Smart Poker Goals. Alrighty, so this episode found me, I was discussing how we can make specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound poker goals. I discussed the importance of making goals this way, instead of just saying something like, I want to be a millionaire poker player. That's something that's it's way too broad, and it's something that many of us, or too many of us, do. But to get the most out of our poker play and study time, we've got to set smart goals to help us get to where we want to be. And I actually discussed one of my goals for 2016 in this episode. And let me be honest, and I'll tell you right now, I am way off, man. There ain't no way I'm going to hit this goal, or the goal that I set. I'm not going to hit it this year, guaranteed. But, I know exactly why that is. When I made the goal, I followed all the steps to a T, all the SMART, S-M-A-R-T steps. But I failed to account for something super important. And namely, that was the change that the podcast, the training videos, and the webinars, the change that all those things would make to my life, I figured I could still play as much as I needed to while adding all these other things to my schedule. And man, was I way off in my estimation of how long things take. I mean, a podcast episode, I thought it would just take 2 hours originally. But no way, it takes way more than that. I won't bore you with the numbers. But every single episode, every single video that I do, every single webinar, holy cow, they take way more than I ever thought. So I did not take into account the extra time all that kind of stuff would take. So my new poker goals, which I will outline them in 2017 for you, they're going to incorporate my plans for the podcast. Or I can look at it more accurately, or I could state it more accurately. My podcast plans and the content schedule, it will revolve around hitting my goals. But more on that in a future episode. For now, especially because it's the new year, forget the resolutions, make some really smart poker goals, and go back and listen to episode number 2. Alrighty, on to the next.
Number 6.
So number 6 is episode number 18, which was about 10 common poker leaks. And I felt that this was a great episode, I hit 10 of the most common poker leaks that I see from listeners and from students. I give symptoms of each leak as well as a quick way to fix it. I've suffered from each of these leaks myself. So, I was working from experience when I did this podcast, and my experience in dealing with each, as well as, plugging each leak was what I put into this podcast. And this was the first in a series of podcasts where I addressed many of the worst leaks that poker players have. And even if you feel that you don't have any leaks, maybe you're a perfect player in your estimation. I doubt there's anybody out there that really feels they're a perfect player. Or maybe you just feel you have no serious leaks. I challenge you to go down the list of all 10 to find at least one thing that you can work on right now. We've all got leaks, and it's just a matter of finding it, accepting it, and then doing something about it. I know you want to support the show, and one way you could do so is by visiting today's sponsor, habwin.com. Habwin, that's HABWIN.com. I know that you like online poker, just like Two Thumbs, this guy. What if you could win prizes at zero cost? With Habwin, you can play free, exclusive $100 free rolls on Party Poker and BWin. Check out our winter free rolls every single Sunday at 8 p.m. Central European Time all throughout winter. That is your chance to jump at the opportunity to win extra cash completely for free. Register now at www.habwin.com/free rolls to start the fun. So if you can play on Party Poker or BWin, support the show by visiting Habwin and registering for free. Once again, that's www.habwin.com/free rolls. Alrighty, so my goal with this podcast is to help you improve your poker skills one episode and one study session at a time. If you are getting a lot out of this podcast, I'd love it if you showed your appreciation by supporting me on Patreon. Patreon is a site that allows you to show your monthly support for the podcast. It keeps the lights on and keeps me going, poker people. But you don't just get a thank you for your support. There are different levels of support, and with each level comes increasing rewards. I've revamped the rewards starting this month. And here they are. At $1 per month, you get my eternal thanks, a shout out on the podcast, as well as early delivery of podcast episodes the day before. At $5 a month, you get everything at the $1 level, plus you get a monthly patron-only podcast. At the $10 level, you also get a monthly patron-only training video at $15 per month, on top of everything already mentioned. I will promote your website, your Instagram, Twitter, or Twitch channel on my patrons page. And this gives you an outside link to your stuff from a valid and authoritative website. At the $20 level, you'll also get a copy of every ebook I publish, as well as the audiobook version. I'm still working on the first one right now, but it should be ready soon, and it's going to be called, of course, How to Study Poker. And at the magnificent $35 level, you get everything from the prior levels, plus you get a monthly webinar. The webinar is sold to the public at $50, but I offer early bird pricing at $35, so you will always be paying that early bird pricing for the monthly webinar. And as a special gift, everyone who supports at any level gets my expert hand reading webinar. I got tons of great feedback on the webinar, so I'm sure you will find tons of value in it. All of the monthly rewards are also themed. September's theme, hand reading. October, opponent destruction. November, getting aggressive. And December's theme is poker math. If you are stressing about making profitable calls or bets, maybe different bet sizings are throwing you off, then this is the month for you. So I'd love for you to get in on the Smart Poker Study bandwagon and support me on Patreon. To learn more and to support, please visit www.patreon.com/smartpokerstudy. Alrighty people, back to the countdown. Okay, so we just finished up numbers 10 through 6. Now we're in the top 5.
Number 5.
So number 5 on the 10 most powerful episodes of 2016 is episode number 49, Leak Plugging number 6, Betting for No Reason. So number 6 in this countdown was the list of the 10 common leaks to plug, but episode 49 covered one of the worst, yet easiest leaks to plug, which was betting for no reason. This episode was eye-opening for many listeners. Lots of people think they have a valid reason to bet or raise, but when you drill them on it, they kind of don't have a good reason. I've had plenty of training sessions where I'd review a hand with a student. Maybe he bet on every single street, and each time I asked, hey, why are you betting? And they couldn't give give me a solid reason. Are they bluffing? Are they going for value? What are they doing? Are you, or what is your opponent calling with? What's he folding? What's he raising? Are you ahead of his range? And knowing the answer to each of these questions before you make your aggressive play, it'll lead to you making better decisions. Not only, lead to you making better aggressive plays, but also better calls, or better folds as well if you can answer these same kinds of questions before you click that button. So if you feel that this is one of your leaks, I highly recommend you go and download episode number 49. Okay, on to the next.
Number 4.
So number 4 in the countdown is episode number 104, which is on 3 bets. And this is a very recent episode, so I'm sure many of you have listened to it. And I did receive a ton of great feedback on it. And 3-bet is the third MED, or minimum effective dose. But for lots of people, it's the first thing they want to learn about. This episode was class 1 out of 4 within that 3-bet MED. And I think they're all extremely valuable. But you got to start with class 1 right here. And in this class, I laid out my thoughts on the 3-bet. I discussed the basic considerations for every 3-bet you make and the reasons for 3-betting instead of folding or calling. If dealing with 3-bet aggression makes you uncomfortable, then you've got to listen to number 104. Okay, we're cracking the top 3. Here we go.
Number 3.
So number 3 in the list is episode 12, Targeting Player Types. And this is one of my favorite episodes. A big thing I discuss almost all the time is exploiting your opponents, But the first step to doing this is understanding the 4 basic player types. You've got to know what each player type is, the characteristics of each, the indications that someone is one player type or another, and each player type you need to know their general approach to pre-flop and post-flop poker. This is the basis for all opponent exploitation. And to help you understand your opponents, with this episode I made available a Poker Player Types PDF. This was a one sheet that breaks down the 7 basic characteristics of each player type, as well as it lists ways to adjust or exploit these opponents, or each of these characteristics. And I've referred to this podcast plenty of times in subsequent episodes, so I'm sure many of you have listened to it. But if not, or if it's been a while, go ahead and give it a go again and see if you can't learn another way to exploit the opponents in your games. Cool beans, number 2, here we come.
Number 2.
Number 2 on the list of the 10 most powerful episodes of 2016 is episode 64, Hand Reading Lab Part 1, Learning from Showdowns. So not only was the content of this episode very important, learning from Showdowns, but this was also the start to a great series all about hand reading. And hand reading is a skill that so many of my listeners lack, but it's something that everyone needs in order to really succeed in poker. The skill of hand reading, it's utilized at every single stake that you play and in every game. And it's a skill that can be improved over time with lots of focused practice on and off the table. This episode introduced hand reading to my audience, at least those who haven't really learned about it up until this point. In the second episode of the series, I discussed my 4 steps to hand reading, and that's a very powerful episode as well. But this first one, episode number 64, the first in the series, this one outlines what hand reading is, why it's important, and how learning from Showdowns goes a long way to helping you read your opponent's hands. And this is a must-listen episode for those who haven't caught it yet. So please, if you have not heard this one, go back, download episode 64. Alrighty, it looks like we are there, the most powerful episode of the past year.
Number 1.
Number 1 is episode number 90, MED number 1, Class 1, on pre-flop opening ranges. Yep, this was an obvious choice for the most powerful episode of the year. Here are my 2 reasons for making this number 1. The first reason is this kicked off the Minimum Effective Dose series, which is going to be the biggest and best poker podcast series of all time. I can hear you cheering, all time. Yes. So the second reason that this is the most powerful episode is because this episode discusses the most important aspect of strong poker strategy. It's the one aspect that affects all other parts of your game. It affects every street you play and every choice you make. And that aspect of poker is choosing the hand you open with. Yep, your pre-flop open raising ranges, or the hands that you choose to open with, they have the most effect on the rest of your poker game. So making good choices here is vital in your poker career. And within episode number 90, I tell you the frequencies by position that I recommend that you open with, and I tell you how to build out your ranges with the different categories of hands available to you. Pairs, suited connectors, broadways, offsuit stuff, like that. If you don't currently have open raising ranges, or you tend not to use them, please go back and listen to this episode like meow. Spend a week creating your ranges and using them in every session you play. Oh, and of course with this episode, I made available a special cash game pre-flop ranges infographic. And this infographic shows you the exact hands that I play pre-flop and by position, and whether I will open raise, call, or 3-bet with them. Heck, even if you don't listen to the episode, but if you just visit the show notes page for this infographic, your game will see some great improvement just by making better pre-flop hand choices. The show notes for this particular episode is www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod90, or you can find a link to it through today's show notes if you're already there. Alrighty, thank you so much for listening to my list of the 10 most powerful episodes of 2016. If you haven't heard those yet, or if you need a little refresher, go to the show notes page at www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod112 for links to each of those episodes' show notes and for direct download links as well. And of course, I love feedback, so send it on in through the show notes, or you can send an email to sky@smartpokerstudy.com. Tweet me at smartpokerstudy, or post in the Facebook group at www.smartpokerstudy.com/discuss. And keep sending those questions in, pretty please. Alrighty, poker people, be sure to come back next week for the second class in minimum effective dose number 4. We are going to talk about post-flop defense options like the donk, lead, check raise, flop floats, and of course, we'll hit some post-flop leaks and talk about how to find them and to fix them. And of course, I want to thank our show sponsor today, habwin.com. Check out their winter free rolls every Sunday, 8 p.m. Central European Time. Visit www.habwin.com/free rolls to learn more and to register for free. Word of mouth is the best advertising, so thank you very much for sharing this show with other poker people. Your sharing and caring is what helps it grow. Until next time, study smart, play much, make your next session rockin', and Merry Christmas, everybody!